What's up, collectors? Welcome back to another ranking video. Today we're going to be ranking all 9 of the theatrically released Spider-Man films, and I have a brand new guest here with me today to talk about these movies, and I'm so excited to have him on. It is Dan Torrey. There he is. Look at him, folks. There
Hey,
he is. If you're
hey.
not familiar with Dan Torrey, he has, well, several YouTube channels now. He has, is it still called Torrey GNR1, your original channel?
Yeah, that's what it's still called. And then the other one I do is I do a Conan the Barbarian podcast,
Yes.
which I haven't uploaded on Tory GNR in a while. So the Conan channel is what I put most of my YouTubing effort into now.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. I wanted to give a shout out to that. Everyone go check that out if you want some very in-depth, very thoughtful videos about Conan the Barbarian in general, right?
Well, so thus far I've been doing reviews and retrospectives on all the original Robert E. Howard stories that were published in the pulp magazines going all the way back to the
Mm-hmm.
30s. And then after I finish with those, because I have the one I'm working on now is the 12th story, and there's 14 in total. So I have two left after the one I'm working on
Okay.
now. Um, so after that, I haven't decided if I'm gonna go through the Marvel comics, which start in 1970, and go all the way until the 90s. Roy Thomas writes all of them, and he had a long run on that stuff. Or I'm gonna do some of the stuff that was written in prose by other writers after Robert E. Howard passed away and other people got their hands on the IP rights. Like there was a lot of stories in the 50s and 60s that were written by other
Mm-hmm.
authors. So um, I haven't decided yet, but that's like the trajectory of the channel at the moment. But we also do a Patreon show with like some of my friends. We've done like movie commentaries and stuff like that on the Arnold movies. So it's
Yeah,
a good
yeah,
time.
that's what I was thinking of. I knew you were doing mostly the original stories, but I knew you were trying to throw some other stuff in there too. So yeah, check it out. It seems like a lot of fun, and we'll be doing kind of a similar thing here. We're just gonna be talking some Spider-Man movies. Like I said, we're gonna rank
Yeah.
all 9 theatrical movies, including Spider-Verse, even though it's animated. We're collecting all of them, but we are only doing movies that Spider-Man is the main character. We're not doing the Venom movies. We're not doing Morbius. I haven't even seen the second Venom movie or Morbius, so that I wouldn't be able to do that even if I wanted to. But I don't want to, so we're just gonna do Spider-Man tonight. It should go pretty well. I'm excited. I'm excited. I haven't really talked to Dan extensively about Spider-Man. I mean, it's come up here and there, but I know we
Mhm.
feel very strongly about certain picks on here, and we also disagree pretty strongly. So I think it's gonna be an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Um, Lee, why don't you go first? Just give like a little background about you and Spider-Man for people that maybe aren't familiar.
Oh yeah, sure. Spider-Man has always been my favorite of the superhero characters ever since I was a kid. Um, I grew up, like one of the first exposures that I had to the character was the 90s animated
Mm-hmm.
series, of course. I think a lot of people of our generation, that was kind of their first exposure to the character. And then, the Raimi movies were big for me when I was young, and also like reading some of the comic books that were coming out around that time as well. Ultimate Spider-Man was kind of the first Spider-Man comic that I got into reading regularly in reprints, and then I was picking it up in issues for a while as well at a comic book store in a town next to mine. So I've always loved the character, and I've sort of, in my teenage years, went back and tried to build like a trade archive of the classic stuff. I have all of the Stan Lee run in trade, and then like in color print, and then I have pretty much all of the Spider-Man series. So Amazing, Spectacular, Marvel Team Up, and Web in black and white volumes past what I already owned in color up until like the mid 80s. And then I also collect some of the single issues from going back to JMS's run all the way up to the present stuff. So I have always loved Spider-Man, and yeah, that's kind of my history with the character.
Awesome. No, that's great. I very similar stories. He's also my still to this day favorite superhero of all time, favorite comic book character, one of my favorite just fictional characters in general. I also grew
Hmm.
up with Spider-Man with the '90s show, and all the shows really. I mean, I watched Unlimited. I watched I actually have them here. This is obviously a bootleg because this was not released, but the '90s show, is this '03 that this show came out? The New Adventures of Spider-Man?
I don't I don't remember when that show came out, but I know that's the MTV show. That's
Yes,
what I know
yes.
it as because that's
Yeah,
what it,
between I think it
yeah.
was between 1 and 2. Yeah, '03, and then I even went back and I actually saw some of this as a kid, the '60s show. But I've been watching this
Yeah,
recently with my son, and he's been loving it. He's only 3, but this show is hilarious and awesome, and
it is.
I love that one too. And obviously, I think the best one we all agree is Spectacular. Um, Also, a
Yes.
really great show. I say that to say that like I said, he's my favorite character, but I haven't had much luck with him in the movies. Um, there's only spoiler alert. There's only like 3 Spider-Man films that I like really like and enjoy and like go back to. Um,
Yeah.
I think he just works much better for me in TV, or at least with what we've got. And I also had a lot of comics of him as a kid, and I did read all the way up through Ultimate Spider-Man. So that's kind of my Spider-Man is the Ultimate Comics.
Nice.
And so yeah, that's just a little preface to understand my opinion moving forward. So I will rank all these, but it was kind of hard because a lot of them I don't like to go back to. So it's just kind of like arbitrary a little bit towards the bottom of the list. But
No, that's totally fair, and I can understand where you're coming from in terms of like, he works better to be adapted in animation or what I've always wanted to see. I know they probably couldn't do it on the budget that would be necessary to do something like this, but I think Spider-Man and most of the Marvel characters are so serialized in the comic books, like just doing them as a television show is just a better way to adapt them in the
hmm
first place. So I think I can totally understand where you're coming from. Like Spectacular, in my opinion, is the best adaptation that we've gotten of the comic books thus
yeah,
far. As much as I like some of the movies, I think I like some of them more than you do. But I definitely like sympathize with you
yeah,
there for sure.
and yeah. So this is totally our subjective lists. Obviously, we don't encourage you to just take our lists wholesale. We actually encourage you to disagree with us because I love reading the comments, and I
Yeah,
want you guys
exactly.
to put your list in the comments. I love hearing different perspectives on this and different opinions, and I just love ranking things. That's why I do these videos. So please put your list in the comments. Subscribe and like if you like these kind of videos, and I've been doing a little bit more of them lately, so hopefully I can keep doing these, and hopefully you guys like them. But without any further ado, I guess we'll jump into it. I'll go ahead and let you go first. This would be your number
Okay.
9, sir. Bottom of the barrel.
Yes, bottom of the barrel. So I suspect we may have the same last one. I'm not sure, but my number 9 is the most recent film, Spider-Man: No Way Home. Um, I thought that this movie was it felt like sort of cynical to me just because like I'm one of the people that really liked the prior two MCU movies, so I'm not like anti Tom Holland or anti MCU
Yeah.
really. I like things about that take on the character. I think there are some things I don't like about it, which we'll get into when we talk about the other films. But um, I just thought the movie it felt like it was written in a weekend because it kind of was. If you read about the production, they rewrote the entire script for the movie a year out because Kevin Feige wanted the entire plot to be changed. This was originally supposed to be a Craven the Hunter movie, which would have really excited me because I
Oh yeah.
love Craven. Um, Everything about it just seems like kind of a rush job to me and sort of cynically playing on people's nostalgia for the prior movies, which I'm nostalgic for the Raimi movies, and I like the first Garfield movie quite a bit. So it wasn't totally lost on me, like the novelty of seeing these characters come into the movies again, but I just don't think it works for me personally. It's not one of my favorites.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree with you, sir, because that is also my number 9. I don't have a physical copy of that one yet to show, but yeah, No Way Home. It did not work for me at all in the theater. That was like the most, I don't know, I guess frustrating experience I've had in the theater with a Spider-Man film, maybe with any film, because it doesn't it doesn't feel like a movie to me. It feels like I'm at Universal Studios on one of those like screen rides, and they got
Yes.
Doc Octo, the actor who plays Doc Octo, like record some like really terrible script lines for the hologram, and like he just pops in and says a couple lines that reference Spider-Man 2 and then leaves leaves camera. Like I don't know. It was it was a really rough experience for me in the theater. Nothing really worked about bringing the characters back for me. I mean, it was fun to see. I think Andrew Garfield's the best thing in that movie. Like he's clearly just like
He is.
having a blast and loves being there. I don't know. He's having fun, but I didn't like seeing his character like reduced to like not just like the butt of the joke compared to the other ones, but also he's playing it like way more comedic. Like he's like, well, I guess I'm the funny one, so I just have to like turn it up. And I don't know how much of that was just him having fun and he was just joking on set, or if that was like what he felt like he needed to do because that's kind of his reputation as the Spider-Man. But I don't know. Yeah, it was very uncomfortable for me with all the stuff that I felt like was just shoehorned in, and then on top of that, I felt like they just ruined whatever was left from Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I don't know. I felt like, yeah, is that kind of unsalvageable at this point for you?
I would say so. Specifically because this movie kind of confirms that Uncle Ben was never a thing in the MCU. So, like, Spider-Man's entire motivation for the prior two films makes no sense. I don't know why he was doing what he was doing before. It also, like, ruins Doctor Strange's powers because apparently now you can be, like, related to a magic grandma and be able to, like, hop through dimensions and summon people from other locations on the planet. Well, in the Doctor Strange movie, he had to train for months, if not years, to even make sparks with that sling ring thing. I don't know. I agree with you. It's just very shoddily written. It's even to me like shoddily directed, and the special effects too. Like they reuse footage from some of the earlier films because they couldn't get, or maybe the actors didn't want to show up for Sandman and Lizard on set.
Yeah. Well, and that's gotta be
very strange.
That's a lot of it is because it was so rushed, like you said. Like they didn't give the visual effects house probably did the best they could, but they probably had like less than 6 months to do some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that was just a rough experience for me, and I don't really want to go back to it. It's possible that I would maybe had a better experience, but I also had, I don't think like my expectations were, I didn't really have any expectations. Like I wasn't like going in with like really high expectations, so it disappointed me. So I don't know if a second viewing would help with that one or not. But.
Yeah. I'm going to be interested to see what the opinion of this movie amongst the general public ends up being. If it'll have kind of like a Force Awakens effect where everyone loves it when it comes out and then like they see it outside of the like hype of the marketing and, seeing it in the movie theater with a crowd. Like, I don't think this is a movie that will hold up at all watching it at home by yourself or with a couple of people. At least that's my view, but maybe
yeah, and
I'm
we've
wrong.
had a couple of friends that we've talked about this movie with where they have had that experience where they really liked it the first time and then it's kind of dropped each additional time. We've only seen it once and we had that experience the first time out, but for some other people it's like that. But a lot of people love it, so but this is just our opinion. This is one part where I knew we would kind of align on that just because we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's go ahead and move on. What is your number 8, sir?
My number 8 is Spider-Man 3.
Oh, well, let me just go. Let's just go ahead and jump into it because that is also my number 8.
Excellent.
Pretty predictable, I think. I don't think that's a huge surprise. But go ahead, I'll let you talk first.
So Spider-Man 3 is a messy movie. I like it more than No Way Home because it actually tries to tell a story, and the person making the movie, Sam Raimi, actually cares. Not that John Watts didn't care making that movie. It's just kind of like, I don't know how you can care as much with all of the studio
he had an assignment
interference
dropped on his lap
time.
that wasn't what he was originally planning to do. So
exactly, and Raimi had some of that, like with the Venom stuff being thrown in there that he didn't really want to do. But Spider-Man 3 is just an overstuffed movie that has, I think. It leans much more into the goofy 60s Spider-Man in the comic books tone that Raimi goes for because that's like his favorite era, to a detriment. I think especially everyone talks about the like goofy black suit dancing scenes, which rightfully so, but even other stuff. I mean, the relationship stuff in Spider-Man 3, I think, is the worst that it ever is in the Raimi trilogy, and that's one of the weakest aspects of it, I think.
It gets so convoluted to like a soap opera point in that movie. Like
Yep.
it's weird because it's so ambitious. Like they're trying to do like an affair and like an amnesia plot. It's like, well, it is a soap opera at that point. Like there's literally an affair going on with the person with amnesia. It's so weird.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know. I'm like one of the things that really makes me sad about Spider-Man 3 is like a fanboy aesthetic thing. Like Harry Osborn as the Green Goblin is a great story in the comics. I really like Harry as the Green Goblin in the '70s stories when he first takes the mantle on in the '90s, when J.M. DeMatteis puts him back in the suit and they kind of do his last hurrah as a villain. Then he goes out with kind of a heroic sacrifice at the end. And they try to adapt that stuff in Spider-Man 3. It doesn't work, but his costume just looks terrible. He looks like a snowboarder.
And they talk about it in the bonus features like that's a good thing. They're like, yeah, we wanted to go with this cool like snowboarder look. I'm like, what?
That's so
it's really
strange. Like he doesn't even look like a goblin. Like
and he's never called that in the movie, of course. Like New Goblin is just like what they call him in like the production stuff. But yeah, he's just Harry.
Yeah, the only time he's called that is when in that infamous scene where Peter goes, "That's a little Goblin Junior." You can cry. And then the other aesthetic thing is, my favorite Spider-Man costume is the black suit. I think the comic book one is one of the best comic book designs ever. Not that I dislike the red and blue suit. I think it's also a great design. And it's, definitely more iconic, but I just love the simple matte black with the big white spider on the chest. Like that's perfect to me. And I feel like it's just a missed opportunity to make the black suit just the red suit in a different shade of color. I don't know. I was disappointed by that.
It's so weird that like it's so simple. I don't know why. Maybe they tried it and maybe they didn't like how it looked. I've never even seen any stills of it though. I've seen the Venom stuff from that movie where they almost did a practical Venom suit, but I haven't seen any of that. I don't know why they went that way. But yeah, that is a good point because like even if it made no sense and it was too goofy, if it looked cool, at least we would have that. But like, yeah, none of the aesthetic stuff looks good. Like I don't like the black suit at all. I hate that it's just like a grayscale version of the red and blue suit. I especially don't like it when it's like extrapolated onto Venom and he's still got the webs. I think he looks really weird. I guess Sandman looks pretty comic book accurate. I guess that's all you got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
visually,
Spider-Man 3 also. Yeah, definitely. Actually, before I get into the point about Sandman, I was going to make. I was thinking I'll have to share them with you after the show. There are pre-production photos of a comic book accurate black suit that they tried to do, and the stunt double for Tobey Maguire is wearing it. And I don't know why they didn't use it. Apparently for whatever reason they didn't think it was the way to go. But I don't know what the reasoning is. But they did try it.
I think I have seen that now that you mentioned that. It totally seems like a Hollywood thing. Like, oh, it's not busy enough. Like superhero suits have to be more busy. Like we can't just have a black suit with white eyes. Come on, that's not movie Hollywood material. I mean, that's what they do to Daredevil still to this day.
That's very true. I think the Netflix suit looks pretty good, but even then, it's a little too busy for my taste. I agree with you. But yeah, Sandman. The thing that plot wise I think is weird about, I mean there's many things, but one of the weirdest things is they try to like overcomplicate the Uncle Ben death thing and have Sandman be this like intermediary. It's very strange and I think kind of ruins like the Peter Parker's motivation to some degree. Like I don't know, it's very strange.
Yeah, see, I'm even forgetting stuff about this movie because I haven't watched it in so long. But yeah, that stuff is terrible. Why would you do that? Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, we could talk about this forever, and people have. I mean, since 2007, people have been talking about this movie.
Yeah, it's a dead
horse.
Like
it had to be here, like either here or at the bottom for most people. I know that I really like the way you put it, where you said Spider-Man 3 is a messy movie, but we don't think No Way Home is a movie, so like by default, it has to go under this. At least this was a movie, even if like all the choices were wrong. At least it was a movie.
Yes.
But so those are the only two that I was pretty certain that we would have at the exact same spot. So I'm excited to see what your number 7 is.
My 7 is The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yes, that makes sense.
So we'll get into it more, I guess, when I get to where the Amazing Spider-Man is on my list. But Garfield is my favorite actor to play Spider-Man. Um, I put this movie at number seven because I think, like Spider-Man 3, it's a very messy
Oh yeah.
movie. But there are more things in it that I like than Spider-Man 3. And the main thing is just the relationship between Peter and Gwen Stacy. I love Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield on screen together. I think their chemistry is fantastic. Um, Even when the writing they get to work with in this movie isn't the greatest, or when they're improving, because you can tell there's some of that going on in this movie. I
Mhm.
think they're adorable. And their relationship, I think, is the best of the on-screen Spider-Man relationships we've
Mhm.
gotten. And to me, that's really important because the romantic relationships that Spider-Man has and his connections with like everyday real people is why I like the character so much. Um, and getting that right is really important to me. So that's despite its messiness, which it has a lot of messiness, like the whole thing with Norman and Harry and the like blood disease and him like trying to get the cure from Peter is very kind of nonsensical at points and messy and doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think Jamie Foxx as Electro is terrible in this movie, not because he's a bad actor, but because of what he had to do and what the take on the character is. Um, but yeah, the Peter and Gwen stuff and the fact that Andrew Garfield's playing Spider-Man puts it above the other two lower tier ones for me.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said, but I'll talk about that movie when we get to it. I think from here on out, we're going to have to just kind of split up our conversation a little bit so that we don't say
Yeah.
everything and then when we get to it, we're like, I already said everything. Um, but I'll talk about that movie in a little bit. But I'm pretty much with you. My next one, I don't know if this will be a surprise or not. For people who know me, it definitely won't be. But my number seven is Far From Home.
From
Far From
Home.
Home. Yeah, I don't like this movie. I know a lot of people do. I don't like. This was one where I had a really good, a pretty darn good experience in the theater with it. I think. There was some
Yeah.
things I definitely didn't like. I still don't like. Well, I'll talk about it in a second. But yeah. But then I did a series on another YouTube channel that I work for called Geekvolution, where we were doing a Marvel Mania series and we were watching through all the Marvel movies from like 2017 to 2021 at the time period, I think it was. And I had to watch this
Hmm.
movie again, and I really didn't like it. And then I had to watch it the next day for the commentary with Captain Logan on that channel. And watching that two times in a row really, really brought this one down on my list. I don't like this movie, and a lot of it is to do with how much I liked the previous movie. Not to give too much away, but Homecoming is, I think, fantastic, and I think this is a huge step down. And I don't like how superfluous this story feels, and how completely like a side story, side quest it is, and and the annoying humor is turned up to like 11 in this movie, and I really don't like how much of a comedy it is because none of the comedy lands with me.
Hmm.
Obviously, if the comedy's landing with you, you don't mind it being comedy, but kind of like a Ragnarok situation with this for me. But like yeah, none of the humor is working for me. I don't like that they completely kind of like they do with Doctor Strange and No Way Home. They destroy Nick Fury and then they just say it's okay because it's not really Nick Fury. It's just this guy acting perfectly like Nick Fury, saying things he wouldn't know. But yeah. So there's a lot of stuff I don't like about this movie. I don't. I think I love that we have perfectly visualized Mysterio on screen. Everything about that looks amazing.
Yes.
He's great. The performance is excellent. But that's about it for this movie for me. I don't even like how he's used in the story. I don't like how we pretend like it's some big like plot twist that the only Spider-Man villain in the movie is the villain. Like it's like yeah, like what did you think? Like I didn't believe for us. That's what Mysterio does every time he shows up. Is he like he makes illusions to trick you into thinking he's I don't know. It seemed super awkward for me. Like in Iron Man 3 when at least when Mandarin's a fake villain, or like when at least you had like Guy Pearce on the posters. Like at least there was, or at least there
Yeah.
was a fake Mandarin, and then like the surprises, it's a different one. There's no. Were we supposed to believe that it was just like Molten Man and Hydra Man with no? That was supposed to be. I don't know. That didn't work for me. I know it worked for a lot of people. I know Mysterio is like the best thing about this, and I think he is. But I just like the other stuff around it less than most people do. I think. And I think we didn't really talk about this in No Way Home. You did a little bit, but John Watts is good at what he does, but he is not good at action. Like even in Homecoming, like that's kind of the point of it, is that there's not really, it's like really low stakes, and the action is not great. And I think that is like more noticeable in things like this, where it's supposed to be this big globe-trotting like monster movie thing, and then like in No Way Home, where it's supposed to be like an action movie. Like I don't know, it's becoming more and more clear that he's not maybe equipped to make these big, huge MCU movies, which is fine if he's making things like Homecoming, because I love Homecoming and I love that kind of low key, more of a, friendly neighborhood superhero type thing. But yeah, I've talked about it too much, and you'll talk about it probably much later because you're not me. But yeah, I really don't like this one. I do own it though. Because like I said, the first time I watched it, I don't know. I think I gave it like 3.5 stars on Letterboxd, which is decent, but it's dropped for me.
No, that's totally fair. And surprise, this is my number 6
well, there we
movie
go.
too.
Perfect. Look at this. I'm apologizing too much. I should have just went with it.
Yeah. I totally get where you're coming from. I think this movie is a significant step down from Homecoming, but I like it a little bit more than you do, just for mainly Mysterio stuff. The issues I have with it I'll get into, but I guess I'll start with the positive. I love Mysterio in this movie. I thought that the stuff that you were saying about like him being the villain and that being the twist and everything didn't work for you. I totally understand that from like a narrative movie standpoint. The thing that I liked about it is because this is basically an adaptation of Mysterio's first appearance, and where he like shows up and he pretends to be a superhero, and J. Jonah Jameson's like, look, it's a new superhero that's better than Spider-Man, and like that's kind of like what they do in this movie with him. But I think it's a clever modernization of that story, and a clever modernization of making him a special effects artist still. I was a little worried they were going to go with the more ultimate take where he's actually like a guy with magical magician powers. And I like that he's still kind of a sad sack loser with special effects technology. I liked that a lot. And I think Gyllenhaal's just fantastic. There's Tony Stark in this movie that I don't like at all, but the stuff with Mysterio and like his motivation and all of that sort of thing, I think that worked for me just because of how Gyllenhaal sells it in the scene where he's talking about all of it. He's just fantastic in the scene where he's at the bar and he's talking to all the disgruntled Stark employees. I love that scene. It's so good. But the stuff that doesn't work for me, I think, is I think the biggest flaw with MCU Spider-Man is they took the working class, low stakes kid that was raised by a New York City union bridge worker superhero and made him the apprentice of a billionaire. And I think that fundamentally changes the way the character sees the world and what his mission in being a superhero is, and all those sorts of things from the character that I like in the comic books. I like that he's much more about like helping regular people, like he is in the Raimi movies and the Garfield movies, like just helping firefighters put out fires and stuff like in the Garfield movies, or actually going into the burning buildings and stuff and, saving people in the poor tenement building in the Raimi movies. I don't like how Spider-Man is so all about billionaire stuff, and especially having access to like Batman level of technology. I love the way the new suit looks in this, but like the fact that Spider-Man has like a Quinjet that he flies around it in this, I'm like, I don't know, like that's not Spider-Man to me.
Well,
the only other thing I was going to say in terms of Spider-Man stuff is I like most of it. But Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man is just kind of stupid at various points in this movie. Like he's swinging around like with his mask off, and like I don't know how his identity didn't leak. Like scene one where he's like swinging around fighting the elemental people with no mask on. Like how does no one take pictures or notice?
It's two things. The last two things you said are so contradictory. Not you, but the movie. Like he's so dumb most of the time, but then he can somehow understand all of Stark's technology to build his own suit with having never seen the ship before or the technology at all. Like I want a smart Spider-Man. I like that he's in a magnet school in this franchise, and like we always shy away from that, and we did it with Andrew, but like Toby, we completely forgot that he's supposed to be like super smart. And then here we just go completely cartoony with it, where he's a genius. Like it's like, oh, he's book smart, right? So he can understand any technology instantly, but he doesn't understand that if he like shoots like a missile at his class. But I know he does that by accident. But there's stuff in this movie that's like so stupid, and then like he gets out of it just because it's like he literally says, "Look over there," and they look, and then he Spider-Man's the missile out. Like that's the thing. I'm not saying this is like worse than some of the other Spider-Man movies. Like it's competently made, but you know how there's those movies that just like get under your skin because they're like they're just annoying. Like I don't know, this stuff.
Yes.
It kind of grates on me. The stuff that this tries to get away with, and the like I said, the comedy that just kind of wears on me after a while.
No, I totally get you. There's comedy moments. It doesn't not work for me as much as it for you, I don't think, but there's definitely moments that make me cringe. In that
Yeah, cringe is a good word. Hate to use it; it's overused, but it's a good word for this. Yeah. So that was your number 6. So my number 6 is the very first one, Spider-Man 2002. Spider-Man. So love these movies. When I was a kid, I wore the crap out of my VHS tape of this. You remember the VHS? It didn't even get like a big fancy case. It was just a little sleeve, and it had like them making out in the rain on the back of it, which was so weird to have that as a kid. And you're trying to read like it was like the whole thing was that picture, and you had to like read the words over it. I felt so weird as like a little. I was really young, like 2002. I was 10. We were 10, right? Yeah. Yep. So I love these as a kid. I had the big DVD box sets as soon as those came out. And then when they came to Blu-ray, I actually upgraded to the Blu-rays. But I was such a dork that I wanted to hold on to my DVDs. So I bought special like 4-disc, and I think my Spider-Man 2 one is even 5-disc cases. So I could put my DVDs also in this Blu-ray case.
That's
because
awesome.
I really wanted these movies. I love these movies growing up. And it's not like one of those things where I grow up and I think it's like, oh, I can't like that movie anymore. It's stupid now. It's more like I grew up into a different person, and it's not what I want anymore from movies in general, and especially from a Spider-Man movie now that we've had other Spider-Man movies that I've liked more. So like I like these movies. I really don't like Tobey, as I call him Tobey. Maguire. I don't like Tobey Maguire because he never feels like Spider-Man to me. Like I said, Ultimate Spider-Man was my Spider-Man, so you probably understand where I'm coming from with that. I know you really like this. You've gone back and really dug into the 60s stuff, and I know that you say that these movies are much more calling back to that. I haven't experienced that stuff as much, but the tone of these movies, Tobey is not what I want for Spider-Man. He's too whiny and reactionary, and he's not proactive, and he's not likable to me. I know he is for some people.
No, that's
I think he's just too over the top. Like I was a very nerdy guy growing up. I don't know about you. I was also very shy. I'm very shy and very awkward, but I don't act like this guy. This guy's like a cartoon character. He doesn't feel real at all to me. Yeah. And so it was kind of insulting to me as a person because I'm like, I am like this person, but I don't do this. I don't just like when a girl is talking to me, just like awkwardly, like stare at her, like act like a human being. Like I would stutter maybe, or like say something stupid or awkward, but I don't know. This guy just never felt real to me, and he doesn't feel like Spider-Man to me. And the tone of these movies, and this is also just a taste issue. The tone, it goes in the extremes on both sides for me. Like. It gets too awkward and goofy for me and cartoony, but then it also goes completely the other direction and too much of Sam Raimi's horror roots. And we were talking about this before we started, but I'm not a horror guy. And so it's kind of like whiplash for me going to two complete directions that I don't care for. And I'll talk about that more with the second one because I think that Doc Ock scene scarred me as a child. But I think... I know that's what a lot of people love about this. I know, especially this one. Dafoe, and he is great. I'm not saying he's not, but like that's what people love about this is that it's just bananas, and Dafoe's killing it with his crazy performance. Yeah. And it also goes to the darker places at the end when he's got the trident and he's like blood everywhere, like half of Peter's face is falling off. But But yeah, like I said, I know a lot of people love this one. It's. I'm not saying it doesn't hold up, but it's just not what I wanted from. Or it's not what I want anymore. Like I said, it is what I wanted when I was a kid. We only had like 5 superhero movies, and I was like, yes, give me it's Spider-Man on film. Let me watch it. But I just have. There's so many of these now that I don't go back to these ones as much. So that's my long-winded spiel on the Raimi movies.
No, I mean, I totally get where you're coming from with the Toby stuff. I'll talk about that a little bit more when I get to where they are on my list, but I can totally understand that for sure.
Okay. But we'll go ahead and get into your number 6. We've still got a whole other movie in that franchise to talk about, and 2 more for you. So we'll talk about that some more.
Yeah. So my number 5 is Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh, Into the Spider-Verse.
Yes. So Into the Spider-Verse was a movie I was very skeptical about when it was being developed, marketed, and when it came out. This was one of those movies I heard all the good reviews of it, and I was like, "There's no way that it's as good as people are saying it is."
Yeah.
Because like I don't know, I read all of Dan Slott's run on Spider-Man, and that's where the Spider-Verse idea and that story comes from. And, you know, I think the comic book story is awful, like most of the Dan Slott run. I'm not a fan of his stuff on Spider-Man. So just that being adapted in general, I was like, and the only thing that kind of excited me about it is Miles Morales, because I have read the early Bendis stuff when he first killed off Ultimate Peter Parker. The killing off wasn't great, but I think after he actually like got to the Miles stuff, I thought it was pretty good for a while. And then I just like hit going being a poor college student and had to cut back on the amount of comic books I was buying, and I had to drop it, and I haven't read it since then. But I do like Miles as a character, and this movie I think is even better. This version of Miles is even better than the comic book one. I think they improved on him in a lot of ways. I love the relationship he has with Gwen Stacy in this movie. And the thing I like about it the most is Peter Parker in this. I love him as the mentor Spider-Man in this, being the kind of depressed, sad sack loser Spider-Man, because that's one of the things I love about the character is he does go to those really low, depressed places where, you know, he doesn't have the confidence like that's one of the things they do in Spider-Man 2, where his like confidence in himself really hinders his ability to be a superhero, and it also affects his personal life, which is what they do in Spider-Verse, where his breakup with Mary Jane happens. I loved all that stuff, and they kind of also reaffirmed that Mary Jane is like his one true love, which is something that was up for question in the comics after One More Day happened. And Mary Jane is my favorite female character in comics, so I was really happy to see that. It's just a movie that really tugs on your heartstrings, and I think really gets at the core of why I like this character in general. And I think visually it's a really cool looking movie. I know a lot of people like a couple of our friends, they don't really like the look because they say it like gives them like seizure vibes because it's like flashy all over the place, which I can totally understand. But I liked the like comic booky look of the animation. I thought this is easily the best animated thing Sony's animated division has ever made.
Oh yeah,
it's really cool.
And they've come close to it last year with Mitchell's vs. the Machines, which I recommend if you guys haven't checked that out yet. It's the same studio, same. Is it Phil and Lord? Yeah, they're producing and like overseeing things, and it's really good. And it also has a very unique animated style that's all its own and not exactly Spider-Verse, so it's cool. But yeah, that's cool. Great. I will talk about that movie in a minute. And this is where everyone turns off the video and Dan jumps out of the call with me because, and we'll talk about it and hopefully we won't jump down each other's throats. But this is where I have Spider-Man 2. Let me explain. Everything I just said about the first movie goes to this one also. It's just that kind of feel, you know? But obviously this is a much better movie than the first one, where I didn't really talk about how that one just kind of has like originitis or whatever you call it. But it was before we kind of had that as a term. But This one is its own thing. I like that it's just like a complete story. It doesn't really need that first one very much. And it just there are things I like about it. Obviously, like I said, when I was a kid, I freaking loved it. I've got all 5 discs, including Spider-Man 2.1. Remember that?
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I do.
And I had the big box set of this that came with like postcards and art and like all the bonus features, and found the Easter egg where Doc Ock is singing and dancing to Fiddler on the Roof. Like I loved this as a kid.
That's awesome.
But again, it's everything from the first one, kind of. I wouldn't say more so, but just it's more the same. Like it goes to some really goofy places. I don't like Spider-Man. It does some cool stuff with like the spectacular kind of vibe where he's struggling to keep his secret identity and keep all of his. I like all that stuff, but the bringing back the origin and the literal, like, and I think you do like this, but the literal. Bringing that metaphor where he literally loses his powers because he doesn't have confidence, kind of bugs me, and there's just so many like leaps in logic where Doc Ock is just like throws a car at Peter Parker even though he doesn't know he's Spider-Man.
That scene is a little,
and then
it doesn't really make much sense.
Yeah, and I don't like that whole thing. I don't like the arc because he doesn't like. It's not a big responsibility thing that makes him get his powers back. It's just, oh, he took my girlfriend, so now I'm like really mad, so like I get my powers back. I don't know. I'm talking out the other side of my face right now because I haven't watched this movie in a long time. But it's more just that feel and the Sam Raimi style that he puts into these movies that I don't like, and it's mostly the main protagonist because I don't think they're embodying the characters like I want them to. But I'm not saying that this is a like worst movie made, because I know that if you're counting along, there's a movie after this that is not anywhere near as well made of a movie as this, but it's just, I'll talk about it in a minute. Right. But yeah, and I'll be able to articulate these thoughts better when you're talking about it in a minute, because I'm a little scatterbrained because I know people are going to be angry at me for having it that low. But
no, don't worry about that. I mean, like, I think most Spider-Man fans are in general agreement that we haven't really gotten the perfect film yet.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I agree with that. There are really, really great movies, or I think there's at least 2, or there's a couple really, really good movies. Like I said, I like 3 of them. But they're all like, this is a great Spider-Man movie with a twist, like you have to give like a caveat, in order to enjoy it. But yeah, these ones, like I said, just don't work for me anymore. But I have no, and I will admit this. This is what I'm going to admit. I have a little bit more disdain for these movies, not for the movies themselves, but for the reputation that the fan base built around these movies. Where when we got movies later that I feel were more true to the character, everyone was like, "Oh, that's not like the ones I grew up with, so that's crap." And like that is a little bit more of what turned me off to these movies. It's not really the movies themselves. But the such strong backlash against anything that's not these movies, and I know that's a little unfair, but I'm a human being, so that's kind of the experience that I had growing up and kind of phasing out of these movies.
No, I can totally understand that. I mean, I remember when the first Amazing Spider-Man movie came out, and I quite enjoyed it, and I was telling people like it's a pretty good movie, like it's not perfect. You should check it out. And they're like, no, because it's not Toby. I won't see it. I'm like, come on, be open-minded, I guess,
And maybe I should like go back and watch through these again and like distanced from that kind of, maybe I'll appreciate them a little bit more. But this is just where my list is. I didn't like rewatch all these to make this list. This is just, I had to put a list together for this video. So this is where it is now. But anyway, back to you, Dan. What is your number? Are we on 4?
Yes, we're on 4. We're getting up there. So this is we're kind of getting on my list to the point where these are the Spider-Man movies I go back to all the time, and I legitimately do really like them. Maybe even love. I don't know. There's flaws with all of them, so I don't know if like or love is the right word. But my number 4 is The Amazing Spider-Man, the first Andrew Garfield film. Andrew Garfield is my favorite actor to play Spider-Man because he gets that Peter Parker is an angsty character in his early years in the costume. Even going back to the 60s stuff, like you'll have times where Peter Parker is like so stressed out and in his own head, and like someone will invite him to go to like a dance, and he'll like freak out at them and lash out and be like, leave me alone. Like, and people are like, this guy's kind of weird. And like, they're like freaked out by him. And like, I think one of the relatable aspects of Spider-Man for, people like us who are like shy people, grew up as nerdy people is, we're not completely antisocial people, but nerdy people do, I think, a lot of times feel like social outcasts to some degree. And Spider-Man was definitely like that in his early days. Eventually, he kind of grows up. He learns how to um, be more balance things better, be more friendly with people. He forms more meaningful, lasting relationships with people because it's a coming of age story. And I think Andrew Garfield really captures that social outcast aspect of the character and the angsty teenage aspect of the character better than any of the actors who have played Spider-Man. Maybe it's the material he got to work with, but I really do think Garfield is the biggest fan of this character. So of the actors that have played him. So he understands that. I like that he has disagreements with Aunt May and Uncle Ben that are very intense in this. Um, I don't know. I love pretty much everything about Garfield's performance in this movie. Even like, some people say he's kind of a mean person, like when he's in the costume to people. Um, Spider-Man's kind of like that in his early adventures, even in the '60s stuff. You grew up with Ultimate, and I think Bendis is very true to the characterization of Peter Parker in the early Stan Lee, Steve Ditko stuff with that book. All of that comes from Steve Ditko himself being kind of a weird social outcasty kind of guy. I mean, he was kind of like a hermit in his older years because he was kind of a weird person. And that kind of personality that the character had goes away by the time you get to John Romita because he's more of a just regular person. So I don't know. I think that aspect of the character is captured in a way that we haven't seen in any of the other movies. I don't think even Amazing Spider-Man 2. He'll do things like go and like make out with Gwen in front of everybody on the stage, and like I'm like I don't know if that's altogether consistent with the character from the previous movie.
Yeah, that's just weird.
So yeah, it's really weird. So I like that aspect of it a lot. The thing that puts it down below some of the other Spider-Man movies for me is the villain plot is really generic. I don't think the Lizard is a great villain in this. Partially because all of the scenes that develop his character were cut out of the movie.
I know, it sucks. Sony, you release so much stuff. Like you do so many re-releases of this movie. Just do a director's cut and put that stuff back in and finish the effects, please. That
Absolutely.
would be amazing.
Yeah, because like the whole thing with Kurt Connors in every comic book appearance, every adaptation is the stuff with his family, and like paralleling that stuff with the family drama that happens with Peter in this would have made for a great, parallel between the hero and the villain in this movie, but they cut it all out. So as the theatrical cut stands, I think it's a little weaker than the other three on my list, but I do really, really like this movie, specifically for Andrew Garfield and Gwen, which I talked about in my Amazing Spider-Man 2 discussion, but that still stands for this one, and I think it's even better in this movie than it is in 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'll talk about that movie in just a minute, but this is where I need to explain myself. So this is obviously, we're counting down. This is where I have Amazing Spider-Man 2. I know. This is by no means a better movie than the two I just put before this. It's a mess. Like, it doesn't come together at all. Like the sum of the parts does not equal a whole, like, at all. It's not even like, it doesn't even come together. I don't think I'll ever rewatch this movie. But there are parts of it that I like more than anything on the list I've put up to this point. Like for example, I also have a strange amount of this movie. I don't know why I ended up with so many of these movies. So I have the standard 2-disc.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's the one I have too.
But
yeah.
then they came out with this cool digibook. That's like a full book.
Ooh.
I can't really get it to flip through the pages right now, but it's got like all all this
That's
set
awesome.
photos and prototypes and stuff like that. It's super cool. And then they came out with this, which I've never even seen before. This is called a Lux Diamond Edition. It's like it's not metal, but it's like much harder than cardboard, and it's like super glossy, and the discs are
Oh,
in there.
wow. That's
Like it's so
beautiful.
cool. I'll probably get rid of the other ones and just keep this one because I don't love this movie at all. I don't even really like this movie, but there are parts of it like I will like the opening scene where he's swinging through the city, like, what do you got for me today, New York? And he's just swinging around being Spider-Man and stopping that crime is like the most perfect version of Spider-Man that we've got, like the perfect condensed version of Spider-Man in a scene like that I think we've ever had on film. And I'll just sometimes pop this in and watch that scene and turn it off because it just makes me feel like Spider-Man for a second. And then it immediately goes into, Electro and nonsense and Green Goblin and all that stuff. But like, that scene is so cool. Like I think he embodies the character perfectly in that scene. I think he's not like hilarious, but Spider-Man's not often hilarious. Like when he's cracking
No,
jokes,
he's
like
not.
no one's laughing. He's just entertaining himself. And I think Andrew Garfield
Yes.
captures that perfectly in that scene where no one is laughing and Rhino thinks he's an idiot. Rhino is a little bit more of a cartoon character than I want, but
Yes.
just that scene and like the swinging looks incredible in that. That's like some of the best visual effects. Like none of Tom Holland's movies have looked that good. When he's swinging and you
No.
can actually like see his suit like wrinkling in the wind and stuff like that. That's a lot of people's favorite suit. I don't know. That scene's awesome. Like I said, I still love Andrew in the role, even though there's some weird stuff in this movie. Like I agree with you that I don't think he would do that to Gwen in front of everybody. And like, he's a little all over the place, but I think it's because he has nothing to work with in this movie and he knows it and he's trying to like,
Yes.
he has no idea what his motivation is. But yeah, there's stuff with him and Gwen. Even though I don't like where their story goes, I wish that we would have got this, that she would have been spread out over a trilogy and they do get Death of Gwen Stacy in the third one. Actually introduce Green Goblin.
Yeah.
Don't do any Goblin stuff in this one. Have a different villain. Like it could have been such a cool trilogy. That's what's so upsetting about it is how good it started and then it just fizzled out. But like I said, there's just some things I like about this. Probably my second favorite Spider-Man score in this. I think Hans Zimmer and
Yes. Hans Zimmer score's great. It's so
it's so
underrated.
good. Like the swinging scene is so good, and Electro's theme is really good. I like that too. Is it Junkie XL that teamed up with Hans Zimmer for this one?
I think so.
So yeah, there's just individual pieces that I'll turn on and watch from this movie. But yeah, I wouldn't even like this movie was playing. I was at like an advanced, or where was I? I was at like a car shop getting my car fixed, and I was sitting in the waiting room, and this was playing on the TV, and I was like, oh, this is terrible. This does not hold up. So yeah, so like realistically, as if I was rating them as just like objective movies, this would obviously be under these two probably, because these two were given creative control. They didn't like try to meddle in with it, but just for like seeing like the character how I want to see it on screen for some scenes in the movie, then I have to put this one up just for my personal taste. But yeah, I feel like I've said that 6 times, but that's just how I feel about it for this ranking video.
No, that's totally fair, man. I mean, I think that movie when I saw it in the theater was just I came out and I was like, "Oh, that was a really fun movie to watch," just because like you said, the suit is perfect and like just the visual aspect of it, I think they ditched the kind of like dark and gritty tone they had with the first one, which I liked kind of in the first one, but I don't know. It's just in many places, it's a beautiful looking movie.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate. And it's weird because you wouldn't think Mark Webb, can't believe I almost forgot that, would be able to, like, he stepped up and shot some really cool action. Like, he's like rom-com director. And the fact that he did so well on this stuff, like even the Electro fight in Times Square looks awesome.
It does, yeah.
I think this is another movie that has like the best action scene in the second act, and then the third act is kind of like not as good, which is unfortunate. I think Far From Home has that too, where it's like, oh, this is awesome Mysterio Vision fight thing, and then the third one's like, oh, he's just kicking drones out of the sky.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
But yeah, like I said, there's just parts of this movie that give me the feels, just because I like Andrew Garfield in the role so much that I just put it there for because I go back to it more than I go back to the other ones, even though I don't watch the whole thing. but that's why I have
totally
it there.
Fair.
I also have this, which is really, really ugly. I think I just bought it to get the digital code for the first movie because they released these as like there's one for the original trilogy that's all 3, and then there's one for this, but the artwork is just terrible. It's like just a cutout with like the villains behind them. I really don't like this. If anyone wants this, maybe I should sell this on eBay. I don't know why I have this. I think I just got it for the digital code.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I'm surprised to see it that high on your list, but I can totally see,
It,
there are great
and
aspects of
that goes
movie
to what I
for
said at the
sure.
beginning, where it's like I don't love any of the movies I've talked about so far. So they're a little arbitrary. It's just however I'm feeling that day. If I want to watch that Spider-Man scene, if I want to watch a little bit of Doc Ock, it's kind of like that. The last
Yeah.
three on my list, I really really do like, and I watched the whole movie.
That's awesome. All right. So moving on to number three. My number three is Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah,
So Spider-Man Homecoming is great.
it is.
I think, as a first outing for Tom Holland, I think he does a really good job. I think the thing I like. I like about Andrew Garfield over Tom Holland is that Tom Holland, because he's in the MCU, he doesn't get to play the angsty, tragic aspect of the character as much. But it's less of a problem in this movie than the other two, in my view, just because it's a first outing and he's still in high school. And I think there are some scenes where we do get some legitimate, good dramatic struggles for the character to go through, especially like the scene where the rubble falls on top of him, and we're doing like that master planner scene from the early issues of Amazing Spider-Man with Ditko. That stuff's all great. My favorite thing about this movie, though, is the Vulture. Michael Keaton's performance is great, but they also do the Stan Lee kind of like mystery villain reveal in this in a way that is legitimately shocking. The first time I saw it in the theater, where he opens the door and he's Liz's dad, was just, oh my God, I was shocked, and the whole theater gasped, and it was a real moment, I think all that stuff is very effective. Because like in the original Stan Lee comics, the mystery of who the Green Goblin is and what his relation to Spider-Man is a big deal. And when it's revealed to be Norman Osborn, and it's someone that Peter Parker knows and has a personal relationship with, like it's genuinely shocking, and that's why it's one of the most legendary storylines in the history of the character. And I think doing that sort of thing with the Vulture really was really effective in this, if you're not going to do Green Goblin again. And I also really loved that Vulture's basically evil Uncle Ben in this. Like, he's a construction worker, blue collar guy, going back to the thing that I was talking about earlier with Spider-Man being the apprentice of a billionaire. Like, they do really touch on the kind of themes about how regular people are stepped on by people like Norman Osborn, like they do in the comic books a lot, like, the rich people stepping on the people that are important to Peter Parker. I loved all of that stuff. And I think this is the movie of the MCU Spider-Man movies that gets the character the most. The only things that I dislike about it really is the Iron Man stuff. I could do without Tony Stark being the mentor father figure for Peter Parker, but in this movie it bothers me less because everything else is perfect. It's a great movie.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I don't really have a lot of negatives about. I'll just go ahead and jump into it because that is my number three. So
nice.
I'm right there with you. This is the Target exclusive, which I love.
Oh, I like that it's a notebook.
Yeah, it's
That's
made
awesome.
to look like Peter's notebook. It's got just sketches and stuff. It is a little weird. It comes with like a little mini comic book, which I don't really care when they do those. Like, what am I gonna do with that?
Yeah.
And I think it's like one of those prequel comics where it's like got Shocker in it, or it might be like a in-between-quel. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but yeah, it's a really cool release. I really like this movie a lot. I don't really have any and people who know me from Geekvolution would be like, oh, he doesn't like this franchise, but he just likes the one that he got to be an extra on. What a jerk. Like, no, I think this is legitimately, I mean, yes, that was really fun that I got to go do that and like be on set for this movie. But so I do have a lot of like good memories about that and like nostalgia about that. And it's cool to like see those scenes play out, but drop all that. I feel like this one is a huge step up from the other two. I feel like this one comes together so well. This one's set up. We didn't even the world building in this one is so cool. Like, it's probably the best. Like, it's up there with the Nolan movies for like the best superhero world that's being built in the first movie. None of it feels out of place or like gimmicky or like it's in your face. All the characters feel natural. And then we just drop all that in the second one and just have one villain and we lose everybody. But all the stuff with the Tinkerer, and we have multiple Shockers in this movie, and we set up Scorpion really well, and Vulture's amazing. And then there's all the friends are handled really well in this one. I feel like we lose that where we just have nothing to do with the friends anymore, and so Ned just becomes a space wizard, and then we immediately forget about them, so it doesn't even matter. But yeah, this one is really, really good. I like I said, I don't really have too many complaints about it. I think if anything, it's like tonal MCU issues that kind of lingering. I also think we have to. You said this is his first appearance. I actually think his first appearance in Civil War is still my favorite performance by Tom Holland, and I think we have to take a few steps back to get him to fit into this story arc in here. Because when he comes in No Way Home, he kicks Falcon and Winter Soldier's butts like by himself, and then like he's here and he like can't even swing without like running into a building. He's like, wait, what? What is going on? And not just like else, and not just like superficial ways like that. Like, but I think also we have to like regress him a little bit, like or not regress him, but dumb him down a little bit. Like he feels when he's in Civil War and he's like bouncing around, and he's all like high energy in the suit, and he's making jokes, and he's talking about like science stuff, and he's talking about his webbing, and he's talking about Winter Soldier's arm, and he's like super excited about science stuff. And then in here, his science stuff is in the background. It's there, and he's smart, but it doesn't. He doesn't. I don't know. I really like that Civil War performance, and I feel like we could have got that if it wasn't bogged down by all the MCU stuff where he has to jump into Avengers. Like that's the biggest problem is he says no to being Avenger in this, and then literally the next year he's an Avenger because he has to be, because that's the big Avengers movie. So I really wish we could have just let this series play out. I wish they would have Harry Pottered it and done like 4 of these, like made 4 of these back to back right after this. Yeah. If we got 4 high school movies that just followed this and didn't have to deal with all the MCU stuff, that would have been like perfect in my opinion. Super ideal. But it didn't happen. And a lot of other people are totally fine with what happened, but I'm a little bummed.
I agree with you there. I'm with you. All right, so we're in the top 2 now, huh?
Top 2, man. And we have both have 2 different top 2s, so here we
go. Which I think is good. Diversity of opinion is good. So number 2 on my list, and this is where I get to be you for a moment, in the sense that I'm gonna caveat this by saying it's my personal enjoyment, not necessarily like which one's the better narrative or whatever. My number 2 is Spider-Man 2. I love Spider-Man 2. I think it's a great movie. So I think, I'm with you in that Tobey Maguire is probably my least favorite actor to play Spider-Man. I think he works a little bit better than you do, but I do think he is the furthest from what I imagine Spider-Man in the costume being.
Especially,
some of the Peter Parker stuff is a little for me, but I love the theme of this movie being like it's not the responsibility thing that the first movie is. It's all about like Peter Parker not believing that he's good enough to live up to what his potential is. I mean, at the beginning of the movie, Dr. Octopus basically tells him, he's like, you have a lot of potential, but you're lazy. And Peter Parker isn't lazy. Doc Ock just doesn't understand his situation, but he feels like he's being spread so thin by all of the responsibilities and obligations he has in his life, and he doesn't feel like he's good enough to live up to his potential in all of these different areas, and it's really a struggle for him. And I think that's a very relatable thing. I think a lot of us feel that way. I mean, I'm not a parent, you are. I mean, I'm sure you feel that way even more than I do a lot of the time. where you're kind of having to balance so many balls in the air at the same time. And you want to be a good parent, you want to be a good professional, you want to be a good partner to your wife, you want to be all these things, and it's difficult. And I always really related to that about this character in general and in this movie. I do like the losing the powers thing a little bit
Yeah.
more than you do, just because that's taken directly from one of the early issues of Amazing Spider-Man, and I think um, as a fanboy thing, I think that's kind of
Yeah.
cool, but also um, I take it as like if you or anyone in the audience has experienced like depression in your life before, and how that can kind of get you down, not just mentally but also physically, where you just have less energy and your body doesn't function as well because of your mental state. That's like Spider-Man dealing with that, I thought was really interesting, and I like that quite a bit. Doc Ock, everything that's been said about how great Doc Ock is in this movie has been, pretty much been said. I love Alfred Molina in this movie. I think this version of Doctor Octopus is a vast improvement on even the comic book one, which is great. And the thing I love about these Raimi movies is the tone of them, because Sam Raimi really loves the early Stan Lee era of Spider-Man, the '60s, and even some of the '70s stuff when you have Jerry Conway taking over. And it's perfect with all of that sort of balancing the tone of goofy superhero stuff, and also sort of like the first two Donner Superman movies, feeling like an epic film. Like the stakes of this movie feel real in a way that some of the MCU movies don't to me, where they undercut themselves with humor so much that it doesn't feel epic. It just feels like a fun cartoon. The stakes of this movie, like Spider-Man feels like he's in real danger. There's real personal tragedy to be overcome with the characters. And that's what I've always liked about superhero fiction in general. Like it can have the sort of goofy, out there, fun concepts, but it also feels like epic and real in that the things that are happening to the characters really affect them in a fundamental, tragic, and sometimes dark ways. And I think Raimi captures that tone better than any of the other Spider-Man film adaptations. So they feel the most like what I want a Spider-Man story to feel like for me. So yeah, that's why I like Spider-Man 2. It's a good
Yeah,
one.
yeah, and I totally agree with that. That stuff does resonate with me. All the stuff about the balance, that even more so now, like you said, I've got a full time job, I've got a wife, I've got two kids. I'm trying to do this YouTube thing, which I barely have time to do. Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy. And if I think really what it is if I liked Toby's performance more, like if when he was in the suit, he wasn't just the same like awkward, blubbery like doofus that he is out of the suit. Like if he came alive in the suit and was like being Spider-Man to me, and I was having more fun, then I think I would enjoy the other things around it. But that stuff just takes me out, so that I don't appreciate the stuff that I would be as much. Because I love all that what you just said about using, because I really like movies that are supposed to be an allegory. I like that we do that with superheroes a lot. And allegorical films usually really resonate with me, but I was just being taken out by things that I didn't like, so that it's hard for me to focus on those things. But that's totally why I invited you here on this video, Dan. I totally could have invited our friend John, who also doesn't like the Raimi movies, or I mean, we know
Yeah.
other people. Eric doesn't like them anymore
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
But I wanted you because I knew you really like these two, and I knew they'd be pretty high on your list. And I wanted some variety on this list. So I'm glad you're here.
Well, thanks for inviting me again. Like this has been a lot of fun. Like it's
Yeah, of
awesome.
course, of course. So my number two is, I think potentially could be my number one at some point. I don't have the time, like we just talked about, to rewatch movies anymore. Pretty much, like I'm basically just watching new stuff. If I still
Yeah.
could rewatch movies like I did when I was, in college or a teenager, I feel like this would be my number one at this point. But I haven't been able to go back to it as enough. I think I've seen it twice, but the theater experience was one of the best theater experiences I've ever had with a film. This is Into the Spider-Verse. This movie
Awesome.
hit me in all the places. Like this movie worked for me like in almost every respect. I had such a good experience with this movie. This is not like you. I also went into it with a lot of reservations. Like, I don't even like multiverse stuff in general, much less I hadn't read any of the Spider-Verse or comics, but I was like, it's weird. Also, it's not my Spider-Man. It's like 6 of not my Spider-Man. So like, I don't know. But it won me over like wholeheartedly with this. I love that the multiverse is not just like a gimmick to do things. It didn't even need to be like a multiverse story. Like thematically it does. No. Like that plays into the whole like anyone can be Spider-Man thing, and I think that works great. But it's basically just to get the ball rolling, to get these characters together. Like you could just as easily tell this story with characters in the same universe. Just a couple different rewrites. This is I loved it so much. They use the multiverse well. Phil and Lord know what they're doing when they make movies, especially animated movies. The animation is like next level, like never seen anything like it, like blew my mind. I am a graphic designer and an artist. So like this movie like inspired me so hard in the theater. I was just taking awesome. It all in, and like I wanted to go home right after it and like make art after I saw this movie. Like I've never had that experience with a movie before.
That's so
this
cool.
movie made me feel like we don't ever really need superhero movies in live action anymore. Like this is fine. Like this is the stakes in this and everything I feel like this is the best made Spider-Man movie that we have. Like if I was just rating them overall, I like the one that I have in number 1, which you could figure out at this point, but more just because for me personally, it's my Spider-Man. This is obviously a different Spider-Man, but it's still very much Spider-Man. Yeah. And we do get my Spider-Man in this. We get a couple. I mean, there's basically, I mean, he's kind of like the Tobey Spider-Man. Peter B. Parker is. They even have the upside down kiss and like a bunch of references to it, which kind of takes me out because we specifically reference like everyone except for Andrew in this, which is really annoying. They even reference Homecoming when he's like holding onto the boat and he's doing that with the webs. And I was like, that just came out and you're going to just completely pretend like Andrew didn't happen. If this came out after No Way Home, we would definitely reference Andrew. It was like, this was the time period where it's like, we don't talk about those ones. But that is one good thing about No Way Home. I'll say I love that he's getting some recognition now and people and some appreciation. People are actually liking him now. I don't know what he did in that to make people like him because he's way better and amazing one, but I guess people just like that it's connected. I don't know. But yeah, this movie was awesome for me. I love, it's like, I don't know. This shouldn't work, right? Like they're trying to do all of this gimmick. It seems so gimmicky, like, but they do it so well. Like they're trying to, like, let's just throw in like the pig Spider-Man and Spider-Gwen's big right now. Let's put that in and like all this different stuff, but they tie it in so well and it fits together so perfectly. Masterclass in animation, in film, in superhero. I wish we got more superhero movies that were made with this much care and love for the character. Like, I love this movie. I think, like I said, if I had time to, maybe as I grow up with my kids, because this would probably be the first one I show them, right? Like, those Raimi movies are pretty dark.
They get
like I saw that. Like I feel like I could show my son this one at like 7 or 8. Like, I mean, it does have the whole death of Spider-Man thing, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it works out. I feel like I'll show him this one before I show him the Raimi movies, but I don't know. Which is weird, right? Because I have to show my son the multiverse Spider-Man movie before the normal ones. It's going to be weird. I don't know how I'm going to figure it out. But yeah, that movie hit me really, really hard, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since I saw it in the theater. And talk about like complete opposite end of the spectrum of my expectations, because I was expecting like nothing going into this, and it was so good. Same. I don't think it's overrated. I think people are right on with it. I'm so glad it won the Oscar. It totally deserves it.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. It wasn't as high on my list just because I guess I just have went back to the other movies more, but like I had the same experience as you, like at the end where they had the dedication to Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, like that hit me to place.
This is the best Stan Lee cameo in my opinion. It hits right after Spider-Man dies, and you're already emotional because Chris Pine was on screen for like 5 minutes, but he was so perfect, and then they kill him, and it's so heart-wrenching, and then immediately it goes to the Stan Lee cameo. And the Stan Lee cameo is the only one in history that like ties into the movie thematically and makes you cry and is hilarious. And it was right after he passed away. This was the first one I saw.
Yep.
And as soon as he showed up, I was already getting teary-eyed. And then he says, the suit, can I return it if it doesn't fit? And he says, it always fits eventually. And I was crying about that. And then it pans over and it shows the joke where there's no refunds. And I was laughing like the perfect cameo that you could do. Yeah. So good.
Oh yeah, no, that movie's fantastic. I'm so excited for more Oscar Isaac as Spider-Man 2099 and the sequels.
Yeah, dude, I'm nervous, man. Sony, please don't screw this up. Like,
I know
I need another sequel to this movie that's as good as this one. Like, but they've changed so much and this got so big that I'm worried that they're gonna dig their hands all in it. Like, they let them have so much freedom with this because they're like, it's just an animated thing. Like, who cares? Do whatever you want.
Whatever. Do whatever you want.
But now it's like, this made that much money. Oh, this got us on the. This gave us an Oscar for probably the first time. I don't know if Sony's ever won an Oscar.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but hopefully, you hope that Sony would be smart enough that they see we gave people creative freedom and they made an Oscar-winning film. Hopefully, their reaction is not, let's meddle to make another
let's
Oscar-winning
make it better.
film.
Let's do it all again. Like, I hope there's not retread in the. I wish we weren't even going back to the multiverse thing. I wish it was like, I wish we just got another Miles movie, or like you said, just a 2099 movie. But the fact that we're immediately, I don't want that to lessen the impact of the end of this movie though. Like the fact that Gwen's, and I know we do that at the end of this movie, like we do the little teaser where Gwen comes back. So I guess that's a dumb complaint, I guess, on my part. But I don't know. I hope it doesn't. It doesn't. I just hope it's good. I really want it to be good. We probably should have saved this video for when that movie came out because it would be more relevant. But oh well, we're doing it now. We're having fun.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Maybe we can talk about because the other ones when they come out, because I'm at least encouraged by the fact that they're letting them split it into two films. So even if like they put a lot of stuff in it, at least they'll have the kind of real estate to tell.
Yeah, that's
hopefully. Cool. A coherent story. So
yeah, I didn't know they were doing that. That's nice. That at least gives me hope they're giving them at least some freedom to pull it off. Yeah. But yeah, if you can't look at this movie, I'm so sad because the movie looks so cool. Like it looks beautiful. It makes you feel like you're reading a comic and watching an animated TV show at the same time. Like it's just so cool. There's so much fine detail. Like they'll put like little comic lines at the very bottom of the screen, or like motion lines on people that you wouldn't even notice. Like this is such a rewatchable film. Like there's so much detail you can notice for multiple viewings, and the visuals were such a cool. And I hate that some people can't look at it. Like it hurts their eyes. Like we actually, I'm a graphic designer, like I said, and we use the Adobe suite. I don't know if you know what that is, like Photoshop and Illustrator and all that stuff.
I do, yeah. I don't have it myself, but I've used it in like computer classes in school before.
So this was fully edited in Premiere and After Effects, and they they at the big Adobe conference I went to it that year in California, and they showed a clip, the clip where he's at the because they were like bragging about how it was made. They're like, oh, this whole movie was made in our software. So and they had like people from the production come out and talk to us and stuff. Like a big
that's awesome.
Basically like the big Apple keynote every year, but it's the Adobe one. And they showed us the clip where he's at the grave and Peter B. Parker falls in for the first time, and then they go on like the crazy chase like through the train and all that stuff. And I was just like, because I don't watch trailers and I stay away from that stuff. I don't like to see that stuff, but I was like, that looked amazing. I can't wait to see that. So yeah, there's I really, really like this movie. Sorry, I've been gushing about it.
I didn't know that it was all made in that software. I mean, it makes total sense that you would be even more inspired to go home and make art that you like literally have the software that it was made.
Yeah, and I'm not a video major. I'm much more just like the Photoshop Illustrator side of it. But I mean, that made me wish I was, because it was really inspiring.
That's so cool, man. Yeah, no, that movie's fantastic. I can totally see why it's your number two for sure. So my number one is obvious because there's only one movie left. It's the first Raimi Spider-Man movie from 2002.
Totally makes sense for you. If you talk to this man for any amount of time, you will get a Defoe reference like within the hour. It's amazing. He's so good at it.
Yeah. So I've watched this movie enough that I have as a kid, I had the same experiences as you. I had the VHS and kind of like wore it out. I have memorized entire scenes of dialogue from this movie, just not even on purpose, just from the fact that I've seen it so
Hmm.
many times. Um, this movie was a very, very special thing for me when I was young, because um, it was just seeing Spider-Man visualized on screen for the first time. Not only Spider-Man, but also my favorite supervillain of all time, who's the Green Goblin. I'm a big, big Green Goblin fan. Um, so, this movie, and also it's adapting one of my favorite Spider-Man stories, which is the origin. I know that's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't love it and didn't like the Amazing Spider-Man, because it was just the origin again. Um, I'm of the view that the Spider-Man origin is one of the best stories told with the character. I love the origin story. I think it's a great allegory. And I think this movie does a really, really good job adapting it pretty straight off the page, um, in terms of like the plot. From scene to scene, what happens in the original Amazing Fantasy 15 story. Um, I love I love, I mean, this kind of goes for all of the Raimi movies, but the thing that I really love about them is they feel so familiar to me as being a fan of the Spider-Man comic books, because of how accurately he puts the supporting cast on screen too. Like, one of my favorite things about Spider-Man is the fact that his supporting cast is perhaps the most developed of any of the comic book superheroes ever. Like, there are storylines in the Spider-Man comic books that are all just about Harry Osborn, like this side character that's friends with the main character. Like, Mary Jane's backstory about her having an abusive father who didn't believe in her and tried to make her feel low, because he didn't want her to ever aspire to anything above the lowly station in life that he had. Like, Raimi puts that in here. Um, you know, all the relationship with Norman and Harry is right off the page. Aunt May is perfect. Uncle Ben is perfect. It's kind of everything I'd ever want from a Spider-Man movie in that sense. I'm with you that Toby is not my perfect Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield is the best actor to have played him, in my opinion, but I think this is probably the most I like Toby out of the three movies. I think um, I agree with you that specifically, like, the scene in the cafeteria where he just stares at her when he touches the lunch tray is really awkward.
Uh,
um, but there's also other things that I really, really, really do like, in terms of just the way he plays Peter's reaction to Uncle Ben's death and how angry he gets and goes after the robber. I think that scene's very well acted. And just everything about this movie, like, it is the Donner Superman version of a Spider-Man film, and I love that about it. The ending of this movie always gets me. It makes, like, my emotions well up when he's walking away in the graveyard and he does this is my gift, my curse. With great power comes great responsibility. I'm Spider-Man, and then they do the final swing. Like, that's like everything I love about the character. Like, in a 5 minute scene. I mean, it's just phenomenal.
yeah.
Um, it's a movie with flaws. It's not perfect. The Green Goblin basically has no motivation after the first scene he shows up. He's just kind of a cartoon bad guy. But Defoe's performance for me rescues it, because he's like just everything I want from casting for Norman Osborn. Like, he plays it with the right level of darkness uh, and scariness to make the Green Goblin feel like a threatening villain, um, and also hams it up and has a lot of fun, and is also playing the theatricality of the Green Goblin character, which is a big part of it that I love
Hmm.
too. It's just everything about it. I pop on this movie sometimes just as like background noise, and like when I'm doing work at home. I mean, it's just I have a lot. My nostalgia for it definitely plays into a lot of why it's one of the one. It's perhaps the one I go back to the most. But I I love the first Spider-Man movie. It's fantastic.
Yeah, no, no, you don't have to justify it at all, man. That's a great. It's a great pick. And I don't want to come off like I despise Tobey Maguire. I mean, like, I've seen him in other things where they're like, obviously he's just doing what Sam Raimi's kind of directing him to do in this. I feel like he probably could have done a more accurate Spider-Man in my eyes, if he was given the chance. Have you ever seen the movie Pleasantville?
I have.
It's a fantastic movie, and Tobey Maguire is awesome in it. And I feel like Sam Raimi saw that and said, just do that. Because he's like, he's like a boy like from obsessed with like the 50s and everything, and he's like stuck in that whole mindset. And like that's what Tobey Maguire feels like in that movie. Like he's from another, and I know it's supposed to be it because he's kind of raised by like two walking skeletons, but but yeah, I don't know. It just that's the thing that it doesn't work for me. But yeah, there's a ton of iconic stuff in that first movie that I still remember to this day. Like I said, I wore it out. And like, I'm not trying to hate on those movies. Like I don't like that I had this big, huge part of my childhood that was so special to me and that I don't have it anymore. I wish I could feel it, but it's just like, I don't know. It's one of those things that I just can't control.
No, and that's totally fair. And I agree with your general point that, you know, I don't hate Tobey Maguire either as an actor or even in those movies, like, you know, think he's horrible and screw him.
No,
but you know, he's definitely the worst. I think he's definitely the worst version on like live action of the character of the three that we've gotten so far.
I think he's the weakest link in those movies, probably. Like I think that
he is
even and even Kirsten Dunst, who's like another brilliant actress, was just nominated this last year for her work in Power of the Dog. Like even she has a bad rep because of what she was like asked to do in these movies. Like it's a little weird. I don't know. And the relationship doesn't really come together. And that's the thing. And I'm going to segue into my next pick. It's all about the relationships for me with Spider-Man. And that is why this is my number one. And every time I say this is my number one, there it is. There it is. The Amazing Spider-Man. Look at that. Look how dark and cool he is. But no, every time I bring this up as my number one, this is awesome, by the way. This is the Japanese exclusive edition. You'll love this.
Oh, wow.
It's like a plastic case, and then it's got the really cool spider there that breaks up into the 5 discs. So it slides out, and it's Peter.
I love that when you take the slipcover off, he's maskless.
So
that's really
another
cool.
production photo that we got that had the backpack. It looks like they photoshopped off the backpack. But yeah, so there's disc 1, disc 2. This is basically what I like homemade made with my other ones. It's all 5 discs. So when this movie came out, if you get this one, this is just the standard one.
That's the one I have.
And there was a Target exclusive that had a bonus disc. This was back when we used to do bonus discs with exclusives. There was a Target exclusive and a Walmart exclusive. So if you wanted all the bonus features, you had to get 2 different versions. This actually includes all of those discs. So it's got the Blu-ray 3D, the Blu-ray, the DVD, and then it's got those 2 bonus discs in here. This is a Japanese exclusive, which cost me like $50, which actually was not bad. Like I feel like now it would be really expensive, but I really like this. I had to get it because this is my favorite Spider-Man movie. Like I said, every time I bring this up, people are like, but the Lizard sucks and Vulture's awesome. I'm like, yes, I concede. He's not as good in this as the Vulture. Vulture is much better. But every other relationship in this is better than Homecoming, in my opinion. I think his relationship with, let's just go down him. His relationship with Gwen is incredible. I mean, everyone agrees on that. Like Liz in Homecoming is nothing. Like it's just a high school like fling.
They're just infatuated with each other.
It doesn't even compare. Yeah. His relationship with Aunt May in this, like you said, is awesome. Those hard conversations that they're having and the fights that they get in. Sally Fields is killing it as Aunt May. She's like my favorite Aunt May. I know she's more the ultimate Aunt May, I guess. She's a little younger looking than Ultimate.
I think she's kind of like the classic one to some degree, but their relationship is more Ultimate-y in that there's more conflict, you know?
And it's realistic conflict, not like she just, I hate Spider-Man because he's the menace. Like, and so that's way better than just like the nothing relationship with his aunt that we get in the MCU movies where she's just like, not really anything.
That's a big problem.
Uncle Ben is obviously better in this by default because Uncle Ben's not in Homecoming. I love his relationship with, I love the whole father figure. We get like 4 father figures in this. We get his actual father, then we get Uncle Ben, then we get Captain Stacy and a little bit of Kurt Connors, which I love them together as Peter Parker. Once he turns into Lizard, he doesn't really have that anymore, which sucks. But I love all the relationships in this are so good that I'm okay with there being a more generic villain. Like I grew up with the '90s show,
Yeah.
like a lot of the villains in that were pretty generic, and that wasn't what I was there for. Like I'm there for the personal relationships that he has with all the supporting cast, and I think this movie knocks out of the park with all that stuff. And I think it could have with Lizard 2, and it would have been perfect if they would have just kept that stuff in. Like there's a whole scene after the school fight, which the school fight is awesome. I love Peter Parker fighting in school. I wish we did that more. Why don't we do that? Like the Lizard fight in this reminds me so much of that first Green Goblin fight in the first Ultimate arc. Where Lizard just pops into the school. He's wearing the coat. Like, talk about fanboy stuff, man. When he puts on the coat and he, like, mixes up a potion and, like, throws it at him, I was like, it's so cool. Lizard is my favorite villain, by the way. So that plays into it, too.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
I haven't read a lot of the classic comics. So, and Lizard's not even in Ultimate, so that doesn't really make sense. But he's just purple, and he's in the team-up the issue with Man-Thing. But I just really like... We didn't talk about this at all, but my second favorite, we have, I think, the same top 3 superheroes. Daredevil's my second, and Hulk is my third.
Heck yeah, man.
So I really, really like characters that have like multiple personalities, or like that literally embody that idea physically, like Hulk and like the Lizard. So that kind of villain always works really well for me. So I love I love what we get with the Lizard. Obviously, I wish it was more fleshed out and as brilliant as the Vulture is. But just with what we get, and Andrew Garfield is just like Tick, Tick, Boom was my favorite movie from last year. I've seen like he's like one of my favorite actors. I think he's one of the best actors we have working in Hollywood, and he absolutely kills it. You can tell he loves it. I love all the stuff you mentioned before. Just go ahead and tick that box for me. Like I love how he's an outcast. He is people. I hate the criticism that he's like, oh, he was just a confident, like model looking guy, and then he just turned into Spider-Man. Like, what? Were you not watching the first 20 minutes of the movie? Like, that's what a realistic outcast looks like these days. Like, he doesn't have to have like glasses and like pimples on his face. Like, he can be like, I think being a skater guy totally works in this movie. I think, I mean, I don't know. I think that's kind of like what it is now these days. And I think he plays that perfectly. That montage, maybe it's cheesy. I don't know. I can't take myself out of it. But that montage with Kingdom Come, where he's like learning how to use his powers and training, like I really loved all that stuff. The stuntman in this movie for Peter is some guy I follow on Instagram. He's like a parkour and free running guy, and he's also a skater. So I've seen a lot of the behind the scenes stuff of that, and I just love that scene where he's playing around on the chains, and it shows that he's like moving into he's like picturing web swinging even before he comes up. I love that he makes his own webs in this movie. I love that he's like a science guy and that actually plays into the story. I don't know. I'm just listing off things. Obviously there's stuff in this that doesn't work. They do some stupid Sony comedy stuff where like the football thing where he just like bends the thing for no reason. Like just cut that out of there. I don't know why that has to be there. I saw this movie like 4 times in the theater. I think this is the most I've ever seen a movie in a theater. It just really hit me. What was that? 2012. I was right halfway through college. That was the perfect time for me to see this movie. I guess it felt like one of those where everything aligns in that movie feels like it's perfectly made for you. And then I felt like an alien because no one else liked this movie, and I was like, "What is happening? Why does no one like this movie?"
I had the same exact experience. Like I came out of it, I was like, "That was great," and everyone was like, "It's not Toby." I'm like, "Well, that's why it's good." I don't know. But yeah, to your point about the skateboarding thing, I've heard a lot of people criticize that as feeling like, oh, it's like a stereotypical like outcast edgelordy kind of thing to do. I don't know. I liked that because that was actually something Garfield brought to the character because he likes skateboarding, is into it.
So it felt authentic.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Like skateboarding is a cool sport. I don't know.
Like
I'm not
people are
opposed to it. I don't
complex.
know.
Like he also is big into photography, and like he's doing like the yearbook stuff, and like that's not considered like he's. I don't know. I like that he was like a 3-dimensional person and didn't just have like nerdy interests that you would consider like.
Yeah, exactly.
I grew up like, this is gonna sound like I'm bragging. I don't mean it to sound like this, but like I said, I was super shy. I had like no confidence. But my parents were martial arts instructors. I was like competing in martial arts tournaments and doing martial arts demonstrations. And then I was like second in my class, just like Peter. So I graduated salutatorian, and I had like a lot of different interests, but I still had like no self-confidence. So I totally like could understand exactly what he was going through. And it resonated with me like perfectly. And then he comes alive in the costume so well. I haven't even talked about this. He's like my favorite Spider-Man in the costume too. Like that, we don't get the knife scene. The knife scene with the guy is hilarious. It's totally it's like it's a taste thing. I know that comedy doesn't work for some people, but it totally works for me. I mean, I watch Always Sunny, and Andrew Garfield is hilarious in this when he's just like berating that guy and making him feel dumb. And this movie, I love. I'm with you about the origin. I freaking love this origin, and I'm so glad we like expanded upon it here and made it like the fact that he, like you said, Toby, when he like, that's one of the best things you liked is when he turned dark and went after the killer. We expand that to like the whole movie in this one, and he has to go through a whole character arc, basically the same character arc they just did in the Batman, where he has to he realizes that he's kind of like he's kind of being the villain, and it's not until he sees that boy on the bridge and realizes what he actually has to do. And I love that we don't spell out the responsibility message in here. I love that it just kind of is there thematically, and if you notice it, you notice it. I don't know, man. This also has, and we haven't talked about this throughout this, but this is my number one score for a Spider-Man film. I know it's kind of underrated for people, but I really, really like the score in this. It feels like Spider-Man to me. It's not as triumphant as the second one, but this isn't a triumphant movie. This is much more of a like an inner turmoil kind of movie. And I love how the variety on this is the late James Horner that did he passed away, which is super unfortunate, but I love Peter's theme. I love the Spider-Man theme when it does get triumphant, like in the montage where he's like building his suit and stuff. I'm not crazy about the POV shots coming from the mask. I think that's a little weird, but yeah. And I also love, like, there's so much variety in the score. Like the score when Uncle Ben's death, it has like tribal chanting going on. It's so cool. Like, and then the what is it? Lies or memories or something, whatever, or promises. The last score where he like tells, I can't see you anymore. Like, it's beautiful. It's like a piano score, and I don't know. I listen to the score more than any of the other Spider-Man scores.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's not one that the score I went back to very often. But I do like the main Spider-Man theme pretty well. It's pretty good.
I mean, no pun intended. The horn, he uses a lot of horns in this one.
He does.
Like, it's so cool. It really, like, every time, and that maybe it's because I saw it 4 times in the theater. That's basically why I listen to scores, is because they like make me feel like I'm watching the movie again, and I have all the feelings, but I'm not even watching them. But yeah, I really, really like this movie. I've gushed about it too much. There's things I don't like. There's obviously a lot of flaws in it, but this is the one I would go back to. Like I said, I think this is a better movie. Technically, it holds together better, but this is like more what I want, because this is my Spider-Man. Obviously, it's amazing that this won me over so hard when it was completely a different thing. But this one just was what I wanted it to be, and I wish. Andrew Garfield is so perfect for the role. And now that he's older, I wish we would have just kept going in like a Kraven's Last Hunt or some adult story with him playing the role. Would have just been incredible. I hate the way this all played out. It's a little sad.
I agree with you, and like, you know, I see a lot of people online that want him to be the Spider-Man in the Venomverse, which I don't want to happen because the Venomverse is terrible. But I kind of wish they'd just like do a sequel to the first movie in that same tone and style and forget about Amazing 2.
Do a Superman Returns it, but like do it good.
Yeah, I mean, no one would see it except for us and be excited.
I don't know, man. There's a big crowd. Like he's got a following now. After No Way Home, they're all coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah. I saw an interview with him where he was like, "Where were all you people in 2012?"
That's so true. It sucks, but yeah, I also really like this movie visually. This is my favorite on-screen Spider-Man suit. I know that's probably kind of a hot take. It works in here. I like it in this movie. I love how it like accentuates Spider-Man more. Like the waist is lower, if that makes sense, and like the belt goes in and it like accentuates like his leaner. He's actually leaner in this too. Like he's a little bigger in the second movie. Yeah. I cannot deal with the Raimi suit with like the puffy muscles that look like you could just push on him like it's a Halloween costume.
Yeah.
And then his belt is so high that it makes him look like, I don't know. He looks dorky even in the Spider-Man suit. I don't know how they do that. But this like, yeah, he looks so like slender and sleek. Like I feel like Spider-Man should look in this. Like he's super lean.
And awkward and like gawky, which is like how Spider-Man looks,
Yeah.
which I like, you know. Like he should not look. I mean, in the Raimi movies, they went for more of the John Romita senior look when they got to like the after Ditko left, where he's just kind of like drawn like superhero.
Yeah, everyone
man,
has like
you know?
huge muscles. Like at least they didn't do like the '90s version of Doc Ock where he's like a bodybuilder.
Yeah, yeah. He looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Oh,
But yeah,
but yeah, I agree with you. Like visually, Andrew Garfield, even like his body proportions are kind of awkward looking.
yeah, he's really tall.
And perfect.
I didn't
Spider-Man,
really
yeah.
notice how tall he was, or until I noticed how short the other ones are in No Way Home. Like when you look at that like photo shoot that they did, and they're like so much shorter than him. He's like a normal guy. I think he's like 5'10", but they're like 5'5" or something. And
Oh, I didn't realize that they were both that short.
I don't know for sure. Maybe they're not, but he just looked like. And I had that when it came out. Some guy was like, "This is supposed to be a superhero." This scrawny guy. I'm like, "Yes, that's Spider-Man."
Yeah.
What are you talking about? But yeah, that's my favorite. Like I said, Spider-Verse could pass it at some point. We'll see, but I just have so much. It's weird to say I have nostalgia for that because it was when I was in college, but I guess I think that still works. I think I still have nostalgia that late, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I can totally see it being your number one. Like, just no, I know like your specific love of that movie. Like, I figured it would be your number one, but just in general, like that movie is so underrated. I feel like a lot of the opinions on that movie are just kind of like the things people heard on the internet when it came out, and like they didn't see it or watched it through that lens, and then never went back to it since. That movie works in a lot of ways people don't give it credit for. I think it's a real good one.
Yeah, and it's interesting to know if the villain was handled better, how much, I don't know, man. Even if it was, I don't know if people would have given it a chance.
I know
we would like it, but
yeah,
as we've established, we don't get what we like. Especially right now, we're not getting what we like with Spider-Man franchise.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're in a sad place right now. Like we said, hopefully Spider-Verse 2 lifts our spirits a little bit. Because I need something, man. It's been a while.
Me too. I'm kind of done with MCU in general, but especially like Spider-Man, like as a franchise, with all its spin-offs and everything right now, it's just in like a really kind of sad place. And like I joke around with my friends who are Batman fans all the time because like I loved the new Batman movie. I thought it was great. And I'm like really excited for like the spin-offs they're doing on HBO Max and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, like you guys get a Penguin TV show that's going to be like this gritty crime drama, and like Colin Farrell's going to kill it and Matt Reeves is going to do something cool with it, and like we get Morbius.
Yeah, and I mean, you're at least seeing them. I guess you're a better Spider-Man fan than me. Like I'm so disenfranchised. I haven't even seen Venom 2 or Morbius yet, and I don't know if I will.
I don't know if I think maybe I'm even a worse Spider-Man fan because I paid money and like Sony's going to keep making them if people see them, I guess, you know? So maybe I am part of the problem and you're not.
But yeah, that is our lists. Like we said, don't fret because you can write your own list in the comments and we look forward to reading them and we look forward to having discussion about it. Obviously we don't shut down any people that have different opinions than us. That's why I do the show is mainly I don't make any money from this. I'm not monetized. Like we don't have any enough subscribers for that. I just do this because I like talking to people about movies and I like it when you guys have been commenting more lately. So I really appreciate that. But yeah, that's it. Like and subscribe if you want to see more movies like this. Hopefully I can get Dan back here on here again.
Absolutely.
I had a lot of fun talking about it. Spider-Man's a character you can do in a lot of ways. So I know he hits people differently. He hits everyone differently. I think that's what Spider-Verse was trying to say. And,
yeah.
So yeah, let us know what your opinions are, and I will catch you guys in the next video. See you guys.
Bye.